Thank you very much, Malcolm. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. I will start by talking about YLP, and then towards the end, I will also show some slides about DTM, how everything fits into the DTM model. I hope we'll have enough time. If you have questions, anybody, please do put them in the chat. We may not have time to address them today, but Melton and I will make sure they're collected, and I will answer you at a later stage if we don't have time at the end. So having said that, I would like to ask you all to close your eyes for a minute and think back to the time when you were teenagers, a time when you were overflowing with energy and new ideas. And yet, how often did you end up feeling frustrated because you were unable to express yourself effectively? Maybe you didn't have the right communication skills, or maybe you were just too nervous to speak up. And then how did you feel a little later when suddenly, out of the blue, you had to go to university and you were asked maybe to give an interview or to some kind of presentation, and you were not quite prepared enough. You didn't know how to do it. Fellow Toastmasters and guests, our teenagers have so much to offer. Shouldn't we therefore wish to give them the tools they need so that they can really stand out as effective communicators and leaders from an early age? Thus, they can get a head start in life. I mean, just consider how much real value could be added to a group of teenagers if they are taught such skills at that vital stage in their life, when they still have everything ahead of them and they're getting ready to build themselves up and take on the world. It is for this reason that Toastmasters International has created the Youth Leadership Program aimed at empowering our youth. And it's already being applied by many clubs in Europe, from France to Italy. And we've had some in Switzerland and other countries as well, and we're hoping to expand this. I just want to let you know that I started getting involved about 17 years ago when I was the president of my Toastmasters Club. It was a minor project at first. The main focus was to teach the youngsters, how to overcome their nervousness so they could start speaking in public, basic stuff. But it became so much more as we saw them developing into leaders just from our training. So we continued with more and more projects on this. And we really tried to help as much as we could and find ways to connect with the next generation, even if sometimes they have a bit of a different mentality from us. For example, they are much more addicted to technology. During my presentation, therefore, I would like to present from my experience some of the most important tips on how to run such a program, working with the teenagers of today. In this way, fellow Toastmasters, I hope to encourage you to help us go forward together to build up the next generation of successful speakers and leaders. Wouldn't that be great if we could do that? So that's my aim tonight. And I'd like to share my screen if that's possible. Let me see, it's possible. Let me try something. Okay, I'm trying a slightly new technique, for me at least. I know some of you have seen it before and maybe tried it, but for me it's the first time, so please let me know. Can you see me? Is it working okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Malton. So I call it investing in the leaders of the future. And what is this exactly? With the Youth Leadership Program, otherwise known as YLP, we have a very strong program that was started by Toastmasters. And in order to examine it, we're going to have to act like Sherlock Holmes and look at the what, when, where, who, and why of this program. Basically, you'll hear it announced that it's an 8-week program designed by Toastmasters. That is very true. However, I would like to add some input and say it doesn't have to be 8 weeks. The official modules are separated into 8-week segments, but I'm going to be honest with you. I normally let it go for more, maybe 12 weeks, because otherwise it's a bit rushed. So we can spend more time with the children, have them practice more, because as you know, it's the practice that is so important. And sometimes we try and have them become engaged and try different types of speeches. So a bit above what Toastmasters has. So it's an 8-week program minimum, but you should always be open to extending it a bit if you have a group that's really interested. It can work wonders for them. And at the end, we always have a special competition. And that works very well. First of all, most of the children love it. They love to go off and show their new skills on stage. And it also works very well as a marketing device for Toastmasters, because we have an external audience now, and they come, mostly parents and friends, and they see what the children have done. So we always encourage this. Now, I want to emphasize that these YLPs are sponsored by individual Toastmaster clubs, but we do get involved at higher levels. For instance, the district has tried in the past to support all the countries, a YLP kit that you can buy on the website is $17, and we will help finance some YLP kits for whoever is interested. And a YLP kit, basically, it contains the manual for the coordinator, it contains the workbooks for at least 5 students. So it's very useful. So the district tries to help in this way and by offering training and support. One thing to make clear, it's a Toastmasters program. The leader, the coordinator should be a Toastmaster, obviously. What we do when I'm involved, usually we have 2 coordinators. It helps us deal with the children, of course. When there's 2 people, you have an automatic backup, very useful. And also the one coordinator, the main one, the experienced one, is the one who's getting the credit. It's true. But the other one, the assistant coordinator, can learn. Maybe it's the first time helping with such a project. Next year, they can become a full coordinator themselves. So it's very useful. And what the assistant coordinator does in a normal meeting, we often have the children practice by giving speeches and videotaping them. So the main coordinator gives theory, and then the assistant coordinator will sit with each child one by one, coaching them based on their video. So they watch the video together and they receive tips. So, you know, this is something that's not necessarily specified by the official manual, but this is what we've been doing that's very useful. So I'd like to encourage it. Who are the targets? It says children up to 18 years old. Now the main targets tend to be teenagers. So we see between 12 and 18, usually high school, you know, upper middle school, the more mature children. But I'm often asked, how about younger? And my answer to that is sure. Toastmasters International does not block that. The only thing it blocks is the 18 years, because at 18 years, you're an adult and you can become a proper Toastmaster. But below that, you can go. And I have actually trained 8 to 9-year-olds. They are very receptive at that age, ladies and gentlemen, so it's very interesting. The only thing you have to be careful of is that you have to simplify the material. You cannot just use Toastmasters International official manual. You're talking about almost babies here. So make it very simple. Put in a lot of games, very easy language. And then you can have the little ones get up and start talking. I mean, it's a great opportunity for them. Obviously, it's going to be focused on public speaking and getting over their fear. There's not going to be much leadership training for the little ones, but it's fun. The other thing you have to bear in mind, though, is that young children are very unpredictable. I said the competition at the end is fun. For the teenagers, for the children, it depends. We have some children, sometimes they are wonderful in the sessions. They get up with no fear. 8, 9 years old, they talk. And then we bring them in front of an audience, a strange audience, and they forget their speech and they start crying. We even had one small boy who was calling for his mommy. So what we did was the coordinator went with him and held his hand, and they gave the speech together. So, you know, it was an experience, but it's something to bear in mind when you're dealing with younger children. If you want to do that, it's great, but you do have to make adjustments to the former program. The other thing I'll say with the people you bring in, the children, aim for small class sizes. Toastmasters International says a maximum of 25. I think 25 is too high. Make it 12. I try not to go above 12, so you can give them attention. They really need attention. That's one thing. The second thing is it's based on practice. They have to be giving speeches. They have to be trying things out. The smaller the group is, the better. The more they will bond, the more comfortable they'll be. So try to go for small sizes. It's worth it at the end. Where do we find our collaborators? The easy thing is schools. We do have these schools who are ready for people to come in and really help. And there are 4 advantages with using a school, in my opinion. The first advantage is they have the kids. So you say, I would want some children to teach this, and they will announce it and they will come and say, these are the kids. The second is they have the location ready for you. So that's a big advantage. You don't have to worry about paying for a location, about finding one. It's right there in the school. Then they're there on hand in case, you know, as a disciplinary figure. Now, I've never had a problem. Most of the children who want to attend these extra courses are really motivated and eager to learn. But, you know, you're dealing with children. Sometimes, you know, they may get a bit noisy. They may get a bit naughty. When there's a teacher around who has the power to maybe scare them a bit more, it's useful because we have no, let's say, no authority. And of course, it does give us credibility when we're going through a known school. So those are the advantages, but I want to turn around because there are certain important disadvantages when dealing with schools as well that you just need to be aware of. The first disadvantage is loss of control. It's a fact that when you go in now, you cannot just say, I want to do this for this many hours on these days. The school will dictate to you. They will say to you, okay, you can have the kids for an hour. This is what happened at one of my recent programs. 1 hour to us at a time is not enough. We prefer at least 2 hours because by the time you give some of the theory and you get into it, time has passed. But they said 1 hour. And then we discovered it wasn't even 1 hour. Instead of starting at 2:30, we were starting later because the kids were just finishing classes. They were going and coming. And on top of that, 10 minutes before our session was supposed to end, the teachers would come around. This is great, but are you finished? Because the school bus wants to leave a little early and we want to lock up. You know, it's afternoon. And in the end, we only ended up with maybe 35 minutes. So this is one example of where there's some kind of lack of control. So do bear it in mind from the beginning that this is a disadvantage. The other thing is, of course, the schools have to do major checks and they have limitations on who can come in and whether the children can be videotaped or not. While when we're doing it on our own, we talk to the parents. They like the idea that the children will videotape so they can see their videos and learn. But the schools, you understand, are very cautious. Where will the videos end up? How will they end up? So it's not that it's bad. I respect them for being worried, but it does cause some extra problems that we need to be aware of. And of course, there's sometimes a bit of a difficulty in finding a school. If you don't have a contact, it's a lot of work trying to approach a school and convince them to take you on. So what can you do instead? One thing I've found works very well is going out into the community with a partner. I have a Rotary sign here because my most successful projects were done with Rotary. They would find the kids for us. usually kids of Rotarians. They would find and pay for the location. And because the program was left completely up to us, we were the trainers. We decided how many hours we would train, and we would often want 2 or 3 hours in one day, usually maybe a Saturday. They would also bring food and snacks for the children, very high class. So, you know, it worked very well for us. We were able to do the program as we wanted, and we didn't have to worry about any expenses, etc. We've done it 2 or 3 times. Another thing is, you see the picture here, you can go maybe into a Scouts organization or other children's organizations and ask them if they will let you come in and do a YLP there. And then you even have parents. What we found out was that sometimes parents would come to us directly and say, you know, some years ago, my daughter was in this YLP you did, and she learned so much. Now I have my son who's growing up. Can I find some friends of his, maybe 10 people, and then ask you guys to have this project with them, and we will find the room and everything. So we've also done that. And we have tried to collaborate maybe with official bodies, such as the Ministry of Education, to get us more general students, but that has a lot of bureaucracy in it. So the schools are good, but you need to be aware of the pluses and minuses. If you can get a good partner in the community, a good, reliable partner, that works very well. So the program works. We have speaking, of course, impromptu and prepared. And let me just tell you that in my experience, in the end, the children ended up doing a lot more impromptu speaking than we would normally do. Why? Because children don't like to do homework, and a prepared speech is like homework. So we would see them avoiding the prepared speeches. And if we would ask them to prepare a speech and they came without one, we would ask them to give it impromptu. And you'd be surprised at what these kids could come up with. So we got them to speak a lot. And then we taught them about evaluation. And here I would advise being very, very careful, because children are not diplomatic like adults necessarily. They just have no filter. They don't really understand the concept of evaluation. If they're not shy, then they may say anything. They may say to somebody, you know, that was stupid. So we have to train them very specifically on what's correct in an evaluation, what's not, how to do it properly. And we teach them about the sandwich technique. And we usually ask them to give their, let's say, their schoolmates 2 stars and a wish. That's what we call it. So they start off by giving something positive, a star. They say in the middle, a wish. I wish you had done it this way, this thing. And then they close with another star. And then we have somebody else evaluate the same way. So they learn from one another in this simple way. Leadership skills, not as much for younger children, for the teenagers, though Toastmasters International does suggest that, you know, you can set everything up sometimes in the form of a meeting. You can have them elect a committee so they can take on different roles and they can chair meetings and they can learn how to lead that way. So we've done it from time to time, but with the more advanced students, it requires some work. When should it take place? Now that's fairly straightforward. You can have it during the week after school, in the afternoons or on weekends. As long as you avoid exam or holiday periods, it's fine. If you have collaborators, either a school or if it's somebody like Rotary, as I said, you know, you discuss with everybody beforehand and see when the best time is. Why should it take place? Well, I have a picture here from one of the final, it was just after the final competition, one of the sessions. And we have 2 young ladies here who are very, very shy in the beginning. We couldn't even get them to speak. And they won in their competition. There were different kinds of speeches. There was humorous, you know, there was the general international style speech. There was table topics, and they won. So they were very, very proud and, you know, very touched. That made such a difference. So I mentioned it in my opening as well. It's because we're adding so much value to the children. I remember once when this young guy approached me after we'd finished our YLP. He was 15 years old, and he said to me, "Mrs. Lilian, my grandfather was a lawyer. My father's a lawyer, and I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I knew I couldn't do it because I couldn't face standing up and going to court every day to speak. But you know, now I think I can do it because of Toastmasters." So it gives so much. And for Toastmasters, what does it offer us? Other than being a great publicity promotion tool, we learn from it as well. It's wonderful experiences, you know, over and over again, every single YLP I've given, you know. And here's another photo. And this is District 109 with District 59. The lady on the left is the current district director of 59. And we teamed up with another couple of people to give a mini YLP on a cruise. You may not be aware, but about 4 years ago, there was a special project done by a member of District 109. And we also invited District 59, where we took a cruise. It was a TLI, and we did the TLI in a cruise boat that went from Italy to France and back. So we also had a short YLP, very short. It wasn't the normal, it was a mini YLP. And these are our students. And we got students from all over the ship, not just from the Toastmasters on the ship, but also from the passengers. We advertised it. And we had the guy who won our competition in the white shirt, the little boy, he was the son of passengers who heard about it, and they asked for their son to join. And another wonderful experience. So at this point, I just remember the words of one of our great scholars who basically said that if your target is 1 year in life, you should plant rice. If your target is 10 years, you should plant trees. But if your target is 100 years, then you should educate children, because that is how you move forward into the future and change the future. So at this point, this is the YLP portion. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. Meltem, shall I talk about DTM now, or?
Yes, please, Lilian. It
Okay.
would be very helpful. Thank you for the YLP leadership program. Thank you, Lilian.
We'll jump into what I have to say about a summary of DTM, and it will also be clear where the youth leadership program fits in. And I want to speak a bit about district officers within the DTM program, because it's something very dear to my heart. And I'll try and finish a bit earlier so we can take some general questions. So let me share my screen again. Okay, this is about becoming a DTM. And I'm going to talk more generally about it and then focus on a few specific points. I'm sure you all know that the DTM is a highlight, one of the main highlights in the Toastmasters journey, the highest educational achievement. And I just wanted to let you know a small fact that it was first awarded in March 1970. And I can guarantee, in fact, it was first awarded to a man, since women were not allowed in Toastmasters before 1973. It's a given. So they had DTM awards before they allowed women in our organization. Just an interesting fact there. And this is a DTM checklist that I've seen used quite a bit because it puts things into perspective. And the DTM, of course, wants a mixture of education and leadership. And it has actually 5 main fields. It has education, club leadership, club support, club extension, and district leadership. So in order to get a DTM, you must manage to prove yourself in those 5 fields. And some are at your own pace, as you can see from this table. Others, when you're actually serving as an officer, there's a specific time frame. But let's just break things down a bit. So, completing 2 paths of your choice. We have pathways now, 11 paths. And this is the main educational part of the Toastmasters program. Each path consists of about 20 to 25 projects, by the way. And when I say projects, I mean speeches, and it could be various other, you could do a podcast, you could lead a panel discussion. It's quite different from the traditional program. I don't know how many of you have experienced the traditional program. It is quite different. The aim of Pathways is to give you a more general overview and to allow you to have more projects that relate to the real world. By the way, in theory, and it's true, I've seen a few people do it, if you deliver a project once a week, you can complete the 2 paths in less than a year. But the expected average is 2 to 4 years. And let me just say here that completing it in less than a year is impressive, but I'm not sure really if that's the right way to go, unless maybe it's your 2nd or 3rd DTM. Why? Because first of all, we're so busy, it will drive you crazy. But also, it's good to digest things and take your time setting them up. If you're rushing to deliver something every week, even if it's just a speech, you don't really have time to think of what it sort of becomes. And I know, because at one point in my life, I did experience this when I was trying to do a lot at once. It was just rush, rush, rush. Okay, I have to prepare a speech. What can I do quickly? Boom, boom, boom. But it's better sometimes to think and maybe to take the more difficult way out, maybe prepare a more complicated speech, one that's more difficult for you to give. And it also applies for the project. That way you learn more and get more valuable feedback. So it's at your own pace. There's nobody really chasing you. Towards the end of all this education, you have to complete your DTM project. Now, the DTM project, for those of you who used to work on the traditional program, is more like the high performance leadership program that we had before. And basically it expects you to apply what you learned in your paths to creating a big overview project of your own. So it's not even made available to you until you've completed 1 path and you're close to completing the 2nd one. So you cannot do your DTM project from the beginning, obviously. It's when you're close to completing your paths, and then you use knowledge that you gained in your paths to set up a project. And the aim is to have it benefit an organization. And when we say organization, it also includes Toastmasters. So you can work on something that would benefit Toastmasters, maybe setting up a major event, being the chair. That could also count. Or it could be an external organization. And you go through the steps, since the point is for you to show that you can lead a team, you develop your team, you have your initial plan, and you go and you talk to people, usually at a club meeting, about your plan. So you explain what you're trying to do. Then you organize the project, set it up, and work on it. And you're asking over time for feedback from your team, from outsiders. You usually have as well some more experienced Toastmasters who will be there to overview everything, oversee it, and give you their opinion. And towards the end, when you're closing, you give another speech. Normally it's better at the same club as your first speech to say, okay, I had my plan, and now this is what happened. We did the actual project, and this was what was learned, and so on and so forth. And I advise you to really work in your DTM project. Too many times we're tempted to find something relatively easy and cut some corners on it. But the project I showed you before, as I said, the one on the cruise boat, that was a DTM project. a major DTM project, and it added so much value for everybody who was involved. So it's something to be taken quite seriously. Then serving as a club officer, that's leadership now. And one thing that's interesting is that, here are the 8 possible roles, and any one of these roles will count. It wasn't that way in the old days. In the old days, you had to have been president or VP. But now, even another role on the club committee will allow you to move towards your DTM as long as you serve for a full 12 months. And I'm emphasizing this because for most clubs, it's not a problem because they only elect officers once a year and they're for the whole year. But there are some clubs that do it 6 monthly periods. So if you've only done it for 6 months, you have to do a second 6-month period. And it doesn't have to be the same role or even the same club. But you do have to, in the end, the total has to be 12 months. And please ensure, and this is for everything actually, please ensure right from the beginning, as soon as you finish something, that is properly registered with Toastmasters. You know how many times I've been asked, Helen is asking, and actually the 8th role is more or less automatic. You will have done it's immediate past president. So I mentioned it because I always have 8 in my head serving on the club committee, but it's obviously if you've done that, you've already done the president, which would count first. So it's one of the 7 roles. And it could vary from club to club, but if you want me to make it clear, it's the president, it's the VP, it's the VP membership, the VP PR, it's the treasurer, the secretary, and the sergeant at arms. And of course, on the club committee, you also have the immediate past president. But again, that means you've already taken on a role, so it's your second role. So as I was saying, please ensure that everything is properly registered, because even at my level, I'm sometimes asked to step in and argue with Toastmasters International because somebody completed something at one point, but they didn't register it. And now they're coming after 3 years and saying, but I was club president. And we have to find all the details and go back. Then you serve as club sponsor, conduct a YLP or speechcraft. And it's either or. So you can be as club sponsor, simply responsible for chartering a new club. There you determine the structure of the club and its meetings, and you start bringing in new members. So it's variable though. It's very, very interesting. It's very good to do. You identify a need and you do it. But as long as it takes, it could take 1 year, 2 years. It's tricky, and sometimes it's quite tiring. But as I said, it's very well worthwhile. Would you believe that I was reading that a Toastmaster in Singapore within a few years managed to sponsor 40 clubs, 40? So if you love doing that, if you love going out, putting things together, creating the club, and then letting it go its way, this role is perfect for you. Otherwise, YLP, we just spoke about it, speechcraft. I understand that already one is going on here, and that's excellent. It's really great getting, people interested in Toastmasters and spreading knowledge. And remember that you only get credit if you're the main organizer, though, even though often more people are involved. Where I do that, I think, I'm skipping slides here. There's one slide that doesn't want to show. Here it is. Serving as club mentor or club coach. The club mentor usually comes into a new club just as soon as it's been chartered. So the sponsor does his job, he takes it to chartering, and then the mentor steps in to help the baby club with all it needs. And there are no specific requirements to be met here, actually. But you do have to be the mentor for a 6-month period and, show that you have been present and helping out. And I emphasize that because the club coach does have specific requirements to be met before he or she can get credit. A club coach comes in at a later stage, and it's somebody you hope you don't need, but it happens. Sometimes you need somebody to help you rebuild a weak club. And that's usually 8 to 12 members. So maybe the club has been losing members. Maybe its leaders have gotten the members it has, they don't know how to continue. So they're there, but they're not sure if they should sign up. So in the end, you only end up getting less than 12 people who are there. And the club coach comes in to help. And the appointment is basically until the club becomes distinguished. So if in the year you're appointed as club coach, you manage to turn the club around and make it distinguished, you're done. Otherwise, you stay on another year and you continue trying to help the club. One thing to bear in mind is you can have 2 club coaches. Normally, they're appointed by the district team. The district director and the club growth director appoint coaches. Having said that, though, I know that, in Division H, you were recently not districted. So I've been talking with Melton. Some of the weaker clubs already have coaches. We're not going to make a change right now. And we'll be liaising with those coaches to see how things are going and if they need any kind of support so that we don't create a mess. One thing to bear in mind is, since there are 2, sometimes it's good to have somebody from that division, not from that club, obviously, but from that division or even area who knows the mentality, what's going on, and can help on the ground level. And then have the second one be from somewhere further away, coming in as an outsider with new experiences. We move to one that's very close to my heart, the district officer. And one thing I will say is that some people really dislike this because, first of all, it's not necessarily difficult to be a district officer once you're in the role, but sometimes it's a bit difficult to get into the role if there's a lot of competition, because the district officer roles are somewhat limited. And especially in some countries where there's competition, it makes a difference. But let me tell you which district officer roles are eligible, because there are actually certain roles where people come in and help the district, but they don't get credit for them. So they're just, the important ones are to be area director. And this is where you're one step above the club president. You oversee certain clubs, usually between 4 and 6. You visit them, you support them, and you're going to be appointed by the district director. And Division H is going to be having 2 or 3. And I say 2 and not 3 as it is this year, because if Division H loses some clubs, there's a minimum number of clubs in an area. We may go down to 2. I really hope it won't happen. I'm relying on Melton to help me with that, and all the rest of you to stay, big. Then we have the division director role. One step further up, that oversees the areas, organizing division events, and usually coordinating directly with the district team. The division director is elected by the district council. First, they have to go through certain interviews, and if, then they can be put up for election. And you only have one within Division H. This year it's Melton. Next year, a new person can take on the role. And then, just like in a club committee, you have various other roles. And there's only one of each one for the entire district. So it's the district core team. You have the administration manager, the finance manager, and these are appointed by the incoming district director. And then you have the PR manager, the club growth director, the program quality director, and the district director. And one thing to bear in mind is that the ones I've shaded in green actually don't need previous experience in the district. So for administration and finance manager and PR manager, you don't even have to have been president or anything like that. You can go directly there. Area director and division director do have certain prerequisites, like being, having served as a president or a VP education. The only ones that really need a history in the district are the top three, the trio as they're known. You have to have had a number of district roles before that and built up to those. So you could be eligible for any of the green roles next year. If you want to go for it. As I said, sometimes it's complicated to manage to grab the role you want, but it's very exciting. And I'm going to do a bit of publicity here before I close to say that nominations have just opened for next year. So there'll be announcements everywhere now that they're opening nominations for district positions next year. And if you want to know more about these roles and how to apply for them, then there's going to be a special district webinar on the evening of 9th January 2022. It's not right now, even though we're starting right now. The call will be open for 2 months until the end of January. So there'll be time. We decided that this period was too busy with the holidays to have such an important webinar. So we'll have it in early January after things have calmed down, and there'll still be time for everybody to see what's going on. There'll be people from all over the world discussing their experiences in different roles. And we'll give you all the information you need to apply and to be a success in your role. One interesting fact that may be useful, I thought I would mention it. Of course, you're aware that undistricted clubs do not need this final requirement to be a district officer. Since they are not part of a district, they can get the DTM, the members of those clubs, without being a district officer. And typically, a country, when it joins the district, is given a 1-year grace period before the rule of serving as a district officer is enforced. What does that mean? It means that if somebody in Turkey has completed all the requirements for a DTM this year, but has not served as a district officer, they may still be able to get the DTM this year without being a district officer. But if there is such a case, I would ask them to talk to me, because I'd have to discuss with Toastmasters International, because this is not always automatic, this grace period, Usually we have to go and talk to them about it and get them to confirm it. So, but that is useful. But as of next year, definitely, you will have to have served as district officers as well to get the DTM. Just the two main perks, I'm sure you have others, but for me, it's the educational experience. Everything I learned by becoming a DTM, I pushed myself past my limits, giving all those speeches, all those projects, taking on all those roles and getting all this feedback. So a wonderful experience. And of course, you have the prestige factor. I mean, when you're a DTM, at least in the Toastmasters world, it's considered very honorable, and there are special events and special advantages open just for DTMs. So that's something to aim for, really, really worthwhile. And I just want to end by saying the district can help you take on suitable projects. I talked before about the DTM project, but even below that, even when you're working on your path, maybe you want to lead a panel discussion. You can talk to a member of the district team, because we're doing webinars, we're doing panel discussions on various things at the district level, and we may need somebody, or a podcast, our PR manager could really welcome that. So you could be helping the district while receiving from the district the idea for a great project that you would be really well evaluated on. So don't hesitate when you have different projects to check with the district team. You can go through Melton, you can come directly to us to see if there's something that will meet your needs. And on that, I'd just like to wish you good luck on your DTM journey. It's a great journey. I mean, I'm going to my second DTM, and the irony is, unlike most people, I have the more advanced requirements done, but I still have to work through the second set of speeches because with all my leadership roles, I just don't seem to have time, but I'll find it. So good luck to you as well. Back to you, Melton. I don't know if you felt there were one or two burning questions that I could answer a few now until.
Of course. Dear Lilian, thanks a lot for a wonderful speech. Thank you so much. We are learning more and more each day. Your presentation was very nice. I am a member since 2014. It is big honor to listen DTM YLP project. Thank you so much. Dear fellow Toastmasters, our agenda is continuing with Q&A session. So if you have time, we can ask directly. Yes, Özgün, stage is yours, please.